Paul jogged along the embankment, listening to the birds sing. He was very fond of morning running. The mood was the most beautiful. In the distance, he saw a girl walking slowly down the alley. She was wearing a ridiculous pink sweater, which was too big for her. Paul wanted to get acquainted, but as he ran by, he noticed a huge belly. The girl was clearly in her last month of pregnancy. The guy smiled, thinking that he was too late again and had already run far enough away, when suddenly he heard a scream. Paul looked back and saw that the girl was bent over and clutching her stomach. There was no one around, so he immediately rushed to her. Her face twisted in pain, and she asked him to call an ambulance. While they were waiting, Paul sat the girl down on the bench and distracted her with conversation. He introduced himself and asked the stranger about her name. She answered through pain that her name was Megan. Paul asked who she was expecting, a son or a daughter, and the girl said that the doctors promised a boy. Then the sound of an ambulance was heard in the distance, and Paul was relieved that he did not have to deliver the baby. The young woman was safely taken to the maternity hospital, and he continued jogging. Paul always wanted to have children, but in his 30s, he did not even have a fiancé. For some reason, most of the girls he met preferred free relationships, but he wanted real family life. He often imagined how he came home, and there was a delicious smell of supper, and toward him ran two funny toddlers. He takes them in his arms, and they all go together to the kitchen where a beloved wife waits for them. All evening, Paul has been thinking about this morning's incident, and he wanted to visit Megan. Even if her husband will be there, he will just apologize and leave. There is nothing wrong with that. The next day, Paul bought a beautiful rattle and a bouquet of flowers and went to the maternity hospital. The nurse looked at the records and reported that they did not have any Megan. The guy was surprised and said that this woman was brought here a day ago by ambulance. The woman frowned at the guy and muttered that his acquaintance ran away, abandoning the child. Paul left the hospital in shock and could not understand how such a seemingly nice and decent girl could abandon her own child. A day later, Paul was returning from work and suddenly noticed a beggar woman standing with her hand outstretched. Her head was low down, but she was wearing the same ridiculous pink sweater that he had memorized all his life. He stepped closer and called her name. The young woman lifted her head and looked at the guy ashamed. It was obvious that she recognized him. Then Paul angrily asked, "Why did you leave the baby?" "I went to the maternity hospital and was told that the mother ran away." "Aren't you disgraceful to abandon the baby to his fate?" But Megan looked and bitterly asked Paul if he thought it would be better for the baby to beg with her. Paul immediately hesitated and all his anger disappeared. "Why are you begging at all?" "Well, because I want to eat, because I have nowhere to live, because my documents were stolen, and many other things. I can't list them all," answered the girl tiredly. Paul, without thinking for a minute, took Megan by the hand and said calmly, "Come on, I'll give you something to eat, and you can tell me all about it at home." After dinner, Megan told him her sad story. One day she caught her husband with his mistress. Out of emotion, the girl packed her things, went to the train station, and got on the first train she could find. All the way she could not sleep and roared with grief and despair. Getting off 8th train, she went to the train station, where after a sleepless night, she dozed off for a minute, and when she woke up, her bag with documents and money had already been stolen. She ran away from the maternity hospital because she was ashamed to give up on the baby when everyone was looking at her with hateful eyes. She had nowhere to go with him, and he will be fed and warm in the hospital. In addition, Megan assured Paul that she would definitely take him back later when she got settled and got her documents back. Then Paul asked her if she was afraid that someone would adopt the baby during that time, and she would never know anything more about him. She would never know whether he was well with his new parents, whether they loved him, whether they would give him back in a few years. Megan did not know what to answer. In the meantime, Paul told her that he himself grew up in an orphanage and knows for himself that no one can replace mother. Even Paul and his orphanage friends could not forgive his parents until now. "Tomorrow we'll go back to the hospital and find out how we can get the baby. After that we'll restore the documents," Paul stated confidently. "What do you mean we?" Megan looked at the guy in surprise. Paul smiled and said, You and I will have to share an apartment now until you get your life settled and find a place to live. Or maybe you've decided to go back to your husband." Megan shook her head in the negative, but she never moved out of the apartment. At the maternity hospital, the baby was returned to her, and she named him after her savior. Megan divorced her husband, and 6 months later she and Paul married. They soon had a daughter together. This is how Paul's dream of a happy family fully came true.